This guy's name is Jihan, as we're used to. He's a loser. His team mocks him in every possible way. Everyone thinks Yu is useless. If that's not enough for Yu, one day after a mission in the city, Yu is expelled from the team, deeming him a useless member. Now he is not only a loser, but also a single. But wait, Yu's eye lights up. The thing is that everything is not so simple. And now, thanks to his eye, Yu will be able to change his position in society, and maybe even get out of the bottom. Many of Earth's plants and animals turned into monsters. Everything in this world is mixed together. Invaders arrived from different dimensions. Among them were human lions, dark elves, and demonesses. The monsters began to create chaos by blowing up everything around them. An era of great chaos began. In the midst of all this chaos, one of the residents was cornered while running away from the monster. His attempts to ask for help were unsuccessful. The monster gave a roar and prepared to attack the guy. But at that moment, a swift red beam went straight down his throat and sliced his head in half. To fight these monsters, humanity created guilds. One such now saved a local resident. The members of the guild were not like the others. They were a group of heroes with special powers. At one moment, the minotaur-like monster that is field boss Goator gave out its roar. The monster immediately rushed to attack when he saw the heroes. The hero was able to defend himself. Meet the Kiro's guild tank. This man is clearly not happy that the monster is so strong. The monster started to put more effort to penetrate the shield of the hero's team tank. The monster raises his other arm and prepares to attack. The hero realized that he can't block this attack. The axe is about to hit the hero, but at that moment, the attack with trembling hands is blocked by some weird asshole with glasses. It's a Kiro's guild supporter named Yu Jihan. Overcoming his fear, Yu turns to the man behind him and asks him to start acting. At this moment, a girl appears behind the monster and is filled with a blue aura. The girl with red hair charges her magic wand with a red crystal and makes her lightning magic come into action. A huge lightning bolt appears and strikes directly at the monster. The impact was extremely strong. A girl with red hair smiles and asks the monster goat if he liked it. Meet Im Seun, magician of the Kiro's guild class. No one has ever survived damage from this spell before. The boss gives out his roar again, surprising the girl. The monster reaches out again, trying to attack the girl, but again the nerd saves her by jumping on her and pinning her to the floor. The monster misses. Seun shouts again, noticing Yu's serious face. Yu is surprised that the monster didn't take damage from the direct hit spell. Still, there's someone stronger. The girl with brown hair has her blade ready to attack. It's main damage dealer Lee Mia of Kiro's guild. In a second, Lee makes a lightning-like flurry of flashes and makes quick attacks on the monster, causing it to start screaming from the damage. Lee herself is filled with a sort of divine energy. This attack causes the monster to drop to its knees and begin to roar again. Lee turns around and points his finger upward, telling the monster to pay attention. The monster raises his head, and with panic on his face, he sees a man flying at him, charging at him with his fiery blade. A serious male voice shouts, "Meteors, smash!" Whizzing through the monster after appears a huge explosion that is connected to this man's blow. Landing a knight in cool armor with a black cloak and red hair, declares with a smile that the dungeon has been cleared. This is party leader of Heroes Guild, Kim Hyun-tae. The nerd watches his team's celebrations and says that their guild is the top one of all, and he himself is also one of Kim Hyun-tae party's founding members. The loser continued to watch his guild. Sparks were flying around the battlefield. Yu stood in front of the leader who was sitting on the remains of the monsters. The successful Kim Hyun-tae turned to Yu with regret on his face. Yu had been expelled from their party, from their guild. The guy's face began to fill with regret. The rainy street, the sounds of rain. Yu with a briefcase walks down the alley. Opening his bank, he finds in his account that about $7,500. The loser continued to keep a strained smile and marveled that he had worked for 7 years like a dog and only received 10 million won. Raindrops dripped off the loser's face. Yu remembered. A tank on their team with a smirk on his face and a sense of superiority asked Yu what he had even done for the team. Magician also said with a possessed smile that the newcomer would do better than him. The only one who didn't humiliate him in any way was Lee Mia, who firmly stated that Yu was weak. Well, at least thank you for that. The team leader had a confused look on his face. Kim recognized that their party no longer needed him. Yu continued to remember everything with fear on his face, looking at the sky filled with overcast clouds he couldn't understand and wondered, what could I have done to stay in the guild? Lightning began to gather and struck the city, marking the end of Hero Yu's story. A blue beam abruptly swept around Yu's eye. Yu recognized that he couldn't finish his story this way. A grid like the grid for markup in 3D programs began to appear around him. Yu's eye continued to burn. His strained smile was removed from his face, and he mentally said that his ability was sampling. It was unique and only activated in special situations. After Yu left Kairos, he started looking for a new guild that same week. Finally, after surfing the internet, he was able to find Fun Guild. After looking at all the charts and weighing the pros and cons, he realized that it was useless. Yu's eye lit up. A system window appeared right in front of Yu and explained to him that the chance of Fun Guild growing into a giant guild right after he joined was 99%. Loser Yu continued to sit with the activated ability and mentally declared that he could see everything. Yu realized that it was with this ability that he could be more successful than his past guild. Events shifted to the room of a typical nerd. In this room, there are noodles on the table. Less, there is not a nerd, but a girl nerd, which is even better. The girl is talking to herself and says that power went out as soon as she put water in her cup ramen. At this point, Yu abruptly opens the door to the room and clearly shocks the girl. It's not every day someone bursts in on you like this, right? The girl immediately asks, what kind of demon is Yu? Raindrops continued to drip off Yu. His breath was cold. Yu's eye continued to burn, and Yu said that he came here to join Fun Guild. The girl didn't understand anything, and therefore only opened her mouth in response. At this moment, Yu falls straight to the ground. Yu started to lose consciousness, and just now heard the girl screaming. Yu woke up abruptly lying on the couch. The girl asks if Yu is awake yet. The girl with yellow hair and blue eyes is a Fun Guild master named Kim Si-hoo. She is surprised that Yu himself came to them. Yu started rubbing his head in frustration and asked the girl how she knew his name. Kim opened Yu's ID card with a huge Kairos seal. Kim was surprised that he was going to join their Fun Guild, so she asked, "Are you going to join my guild after being in such a giant guild?" Yu's face gave us a lot of insight. It kept sweating, and then Yu turned to Kim and stood up and said he could explain everything to her. Kim clapped her hands and said she understood his situation. Still, Kim, with a regretful look on her face, continued to tell Yu that with his experience, he could easily join any other guild. Yu kept thinking and trying to decide to tell her the truth. Yes, about his mystical ability that helped him make this decision. Kim interrupted Yu's thoughts by taking off his headphones and saying that it looked like Yu couldn't tell her. So Kim asked Yu to tell her something about himself. The girl took off her earmuffs and showed her long ears and declared that she was the child of an elf and a human, a half-elf. Yu was a bit surprised by this statement. In the past, after many incidents of invasion from different dimensions, the world found out about the different species. One of the known ones are the elves. Yes, this frame is epic. Kim continued to load Yu up and say that she has the blood of elves in her that destroy humans. Kim asked Yu what he thinks about it. Does Yu still want to join? Yu's face continued to fill with seriousness, while Kim continued to stare at Yu in silence. Kim's body was trembling, which Yu noticed. He realized that the girl was trying to intimidate him, but she was trembling and afraid. Yu said that he had nothing against elves. Moreover, he had seen them a few times, and they weren't too different from humans. The word surprised Kim a lot. Yu smiled and said that discrimination because of race is a thing for stupid people. The loser's statement made Kim blush, as the guy seems to have a talent for compliments. Kim said that she understood his situation, and she reviewed his application positively and will contact him afterwards. After Yu thanked Kim, the crystal in the magic wand began to glow a bright turquoise color. The girl immediately noticed it and was surprised that Pluron was reacting now. Then the crystal began to glow even brighter and rise up. It was the spirit of a sylph, judging by the girl's thoughts. The sylph began to gather a huge amount of air around him. Sylph had been asleep for about 12 years. Kim realized that and didn't understand why the hell Sylph was awakening right now. Afterward, Sylph began to approach Yu directly. The crystal started to enter the loser's head, and a huge light came on. Kim immediately started to pull her hand straight towards Yu and shouted, "No!" At that moment, a huge turquoise beam appeared in the middle of the city and hit right into the building where the heroes were. Kim continued to stare at the whole picture, and then Kim's face changed to one of surprise. It wasn't surprising because Yu was concentrating wind energy and was covered in a wind-like appearance. Kim realized that Sylph had made a contract directly with the man. The expelled hero named Jihan continued to concentrate a huge amount of magical energy in his hand. Now he had obtained a super rare class that only 20 people in the world have. Yu compressed his magical energy, making a semblance of compression. We realized that this class is called Elementalist. In this world, many heroes are different from each other. All heroes are only bound by the fact that they must contract in special situations, with special creatures, and use their powers. Yu also got an ultra-rare class called Spirit Summoner. There are different spirit summoners all over the world. For example, the Spirit Summoner of Mist, named Luca Harrison from Sweden. Also, the Spirit Summoner of the Sea named Morosi Soifua from Samoa. Also, the Spirit Summoner of the Sand named Abu Bakar. What country do you think he's from? Write in the comments. Each one wields power equivalent to an entire guild. They are beings beyond the norm. Now the norms were shattered. Yu was gathering energy in the middle of the room and making the air around him shatter. Yu Jihan, Elementalist from South Korea, was born. The events unfold in a very fun guild LOL. The sign is lit up. At headquarters, Yu asks Kim if he really made a contract with a spirit. Kim pops a hot drink and points out that it's all true. Sylph is a wind spirit, a girl with long ears looking like an elf, just like that. Kim kept saying that Yu signed a contract with her deceased mother. Ha 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 ha. The fool immediately started saying that he would bring her back right away, cancel the contract, or do something else. Kim sipped her coffee and said it was too late for that. Since Yu was filled with spirit energy, he made a contract and locked the spirit in himself, and now it's not so easy to change the owner of the spirit. Moreover, Yu was shocked that the contract would last for the rest of his life. Still, Yu asked the girl, "So what should I do?" Kim was surprised by such a question. Kim stood up abruptly and waved her hands, saying that Yu had passed the test. So Kim also asked him if he was going to run away now. Yu heard that and immediately said that no, he wasn't going to do that. Yu made a serious face and firmly stated that he has no intention JF joining any guild other than Kakuljem. This made the girl think a little, in which case he said that he had an eye for good things. Then Kim smiled and held out her hand, saying that she wanted to teach him how to use the wind spirit. Still, Kim opened her eyes wide when she saw the light. Yu said that he is going to test this one now in MA. Yu focuses the energy again and says he's going to go to monster area. In short, MA, it refers to a specific area where monsters appear. It's bounded by a special grid right in the middle of the city. These areas are grades from level 5 to level 1. As you advance to level 1, the monsters become more formidable. Now the heroes have arrived right in this location. Yu took his sword with him because he is going to go straight to the level 5 MA located in Buchen. He's going to test his strength right here. Kim has her staff with her, and she turns her head to look for something, so Yu turns to her and asks her, "Is there any problem?" This shocks Kim immediately. She explains that this is the first time she has ever come face to face with monsters since she was in Hero Academy training. Naturally, Yu was surprised. He asked her why she didn't tell him earlier. Then Kim continued to blush dramatically and said that she was a little embarrassed because she was the guild leader. Then Yu said that she was going to take the leadership. After a while, Kim and Yu walked through the grid that marks the location. As soon as they passed through the wall, the huge ruined buildings became visible. Yu immediately went in front of Kim. Yu turned to Kim and asked her if she could tell what kind of monsters were appearing here. Then Kim immediately went to her phone and said she would do it right away. It's home to a certain cockatrice, a huge bird with a huge funny beak. According to the news about 2 weeks ago in this area, there was accident involving a truck carrying chicks overturned. Yu reached into his scabbard and started pulling out his sword and asked Yu, "They wouldn't be bad practice opponents, would they? From now on, it's a battlefield where blood can be spilled and flesh can be torn at any moment. With a party on only 2 people, that is Yu and Kim. You have to be both the attacker and the tanker." Kim's face turned. Kim sharply turned to Yu, saying that she can feel that there are monsters here. It did. Behind one vehicle, the cockatrice monster held a human in its beak. The level 5 cockatrice made a nasty sound and looked at the new guests. This made the 2 heroes immediately startled. They began to feel fear and felt like there were many pools of blood around. Yu immediately shouted to Kim to support him from the back. Cockatrice rushed to attack where Yu was able to block the attack with his sword. This made Yu smile. Yu turned around and turned to Kim, who was already casting a spell covering the surroundings with blue wind magic. Kim opened her eyes abruptly. Kim used the wind arrow spell and created a huge wind shot of blue energy. Yui managed to immediately jump away from the arrow, and Cockatrice took the full impact. Cockatrice lay unconscious while Kim continued to stare at Cockatrice in silence. Yui turned to Kim and asked her if she was quite skilled at this. Kim, on the other hand, said that she might not look like that, but she was a top student in the Heroic Academy. At that moment, a strange silhouette appeared behind the car. Yui was exposed to Cockatrice's attack. Kim warned Yu, so he turned around, his eye lit up, and this event activated his skill. The grid that warned Yu of danger with special signs appeared again. At this time, Yu just stood there until the system window notified him that there was some sampling going on. Yu quietly said, "Evasive maneuvering." The system assured Yu that there was an 82% chance that he would dodge by crouching down. Yu did so. Then he created a sphere of air in his hand and used haste to shred the surrounding cockatrices with his blade, creating a tornado-like formation. Yu's eye continued to burn as he epically slashed the monsters. Afterwards, Yu swung his blade at the defeated opponents. Kim looked at Yu with surprise and simultaneous fear and said it was ridiculous. Kim couldn't figure out if he had really awakened just yesterday. Yu continued to stand there epically, and Yu put his sword back in its scabbard and turned to Kim, saying they needed to get this together. Yu reached for the monster's head and Kim immediately started running towards him. Yu started to hope that he passed Kim's test. As the moment Yu raised his head, his eyes started to glow again. Yu started yelling for Kim to turn around. At that moment, a huge monster appears and immediately tries to attack Kim right in the back. The monster successfully lunges, but his foot remains in the rock he hit. At that moment, Yu lifts Kim in his arms and asks her, "Are you okay?" Kim replies that she is, and then gets into a fighting stance and asks why such a monster is in level 5 MA. Yu immediately realized something. Yu, holding his sword, assumed that this monster was a variant. Judging from the intelligence system, the level of the monster is unknown. It is the same cockatrice, but in the form of a variant evolution that is much larger than its normal form. Yu's eye was activated due to the events. The system window appeared right in front of him and notified him that the chance of winning was 12%. Cockatrice gave out his roar, and Yu turned to Kim, who was standing behind him, and asked her, "Are he able to follow this monster's moves?" After Kim only stammered that she could, Yu immediately rushed forward. At the same time, Cockatrice landed and unleashed a huge red stream of energy and his roar. Cockatrice prepared to attack while Yui continued to make his dash and rush towards Cockatrice. At this moment, Kim shouted, "Now!" Due to this, the girl immediately used the slow wind spell. She sent a semblance of purple threads directly at the enemy. Yu flew among them, and after Cockatrix was struck by the threads and was already right above his target. At that moment, the threads on Cockatrix's beak disappeared, and he let out a roar that pushed Yui away. Yu continues to attack, falling more and more with each passing second as he remembers how the leader eliminated him from the team. At that moment, Cockatrix's beak is covered in red netting, and Yu then swiftly swoops down on poor Cockatrix's body and slices him to pieces. Yui, having finished his attack, starts to fall and falls into the debris, apparently having lost his strength. A pillar of smoke and the silhouette of a man appears. The man adjusts his glasses and sighs heavily. It turns out to be a dude wearing a cool shirt with strange Hawaiian-like patterns. The man wonders if there's another spirit summoner in South Korea. This is the spirit summoner of Earth Yun Doha. At this time, there is a loud noise among the debris, and then a huge snake with red eyes appears. Moreover, they turn out to be much more than one snake. On this battlefield, Yuya's old squad is fighting. Their guild tank beats his fists and activates the mockery skill, spreading blue energy across the battlefield and provoking the nearest snake to attack him. Consequently, the serpent absorbed by the energy and exposed to the taunt attacks the tank. The tank holds back the monster's attack with all his might. The tank asks Sion to pull up, for he can no longer hold back the serpent's attack. The girl appears and says she understands. Sion's eyes light up, and she uses chain lighting, which causes a huge chain of lightning to go straight at the snakes. A huge yellow explosion filled with energy appears, and instead of a monster, all that's left is a field mined with lightning. Sion smilingly continues charging his wand and laughing, saying that making such a fuss over their small fries is pathetic. Tank says he's almost trapped him, but Sion just gives him a wave of her hands and reminds him that she told him to aim deeper. The tank's face changed, surprisingly. The worm that appeared to be alive behind them reappeared. The tank was trying to warn Sion. Based on that, Sion turns around and tries to ask Yui to cover her from the back. But at that moment, Sion's eyes open wide. The monster continues to attack her. The girl realized that he's no longer around. What a mess, huh? Luckily, the girl is saved by their squad leader, who slices the monster in half, creating streams of red energy. Yes, that Kim Hyun-tae. After all the worms have fallen from the girl's attack, the two heroes decide to rest. The girl at this point stated that she couldn't stand it. Tank was surprised that one of the worms was very different from the others. He assumes that the worm was a mutant. Sion remarks that she's not sure, but that worm was clearly stronger than the others. At that moment, Hyun-tae appears and turns to the heroes, saying that they were just regular giant worms. Hyun-tae sharply hits one of the worms and expresses his displeasure, asking why did they struggle so much with those kinds of monsters. The tank tries to start making excuses, but their gaze turns in a slightly different direction. It turns out to be Im-iya, covered in blood and coming out of the battle, two karambits in her hands. The girl's face changes and declares that Zone 2 has been cleaned up. Hunyai turns to Aya and reminds her that he told her earlier not to take any risks. Hunyai gets so angry that even veins start to appear on his forehead. Hunyai also points out that no one will be able to take care of her and watch her back. Aya turns her eyes to the leader and firmly says that she knows. The team's tank remembers Yu and wonders if this guy was really so important that after he left, chaos broke out in their team. The leader interrupts his comrades' musings by shouting that it's impossible. The leader went on to say that if he left, he's still just Yu and not their savior. The leader is sure that they don't need someone like him. At this moment, Yu began to be covered in a blue wind aura in the middle of the battlefield. Kim continued to watch him from the back and marveled that he was right now destroying this mutant single-handedly. Kim couldn't understand who the hell was this Yu. Kim runs up to Jihan and asks him if he is hurt. While Jihan is silent, at one point Jihan just falls down and Kim keeps running to him. Kim starts shouting sharply and asks him, "Are you okay?" Yu started to turn to Kim, saying the last words. A cloudy face asked Kim to loot them and pointed his finger at the loot around. Kim's face was shocked. Kim continued to listen to Yu, saying that Mutant monsters are very rare, and if sold, they have an extremely high price. Then Kim does the logical thing. She slams her fist right on Yui's stomach and tells him that he's not the one she was worried about. Still, the two heroes are surprised that there is a lot of loot. At this point, a silhouette of a hero appears, saying that it looks like they could use some help. A guy with ski goggles and a huge backpack behind his back greets the heroes. The guy smiles at the heroes. He also has a mole near his eye. The guy introduces himself with the name Jank Sa-im. He comes from the monster disposal company, Mongdang. Kim hears about it for the first time. Then Yu points out to her that they specialize in collecting monster byproducts. Still, Yu is confused that the contractor is in MA level 5. The guy starts scratching the back of his head awkwardly and says that their company is new and they have to do this to make ends meet. Still, when it comes to the loot, the guy suggests leaving it all to them, the Mongdangs. The heroes began to look at the loot that was left from the monster. Yu continued to be silent, and Kim with a smile said that they had caught the perfect timing and now can safely leave all the loot to them. Still, Yu felt that something was wrong. At that moment, Jank put on his gloves and asked to let him check the priest. The guy started to analyze the loot and was amazed that Yu had made it so clean. With such quality loot, they could sell it for a high price. Kim smiled and began to imagine that they would improve their office, while Yu didn't understand anything while Jank was doing something. Jank smilingly agreed with the heroes, saying that of course they could keep the remains. But reaching for the crystal, he smiled evilly and let us know that he would keep the best for himself. These are magic crystals that fall only from mutants, and if Jank sells them, he can become rich. At that moment, a huge stream of earth energy appeared beneath Jank. After a while, he was restrained by a kind of shackle made of stone. Jank began to shout furiously, asking to free him, and then he would surely return the magic crystal to them. At that moment, there comes the epic voice of a serious man who says that idiots like this are always getting in the wrong places with their sticky fingers. A cold sweat starts running down Jank's face when he sees this man. The serious man said that an idiot shouldn't take what doesn't belong to him. Kim's face was filled with fear, while Yui just looked at this man. The same dude in the Hawaiian shirt covered in his signature earth aura appears. Yoon Do-ha fixed his hair, and with veins on his face, he smiled, saying that those magic crystals belonged to him. Kim, of course, recognized the Class 1 hero from Dice Guild. She asked why he was even here. At this moment, there was a magic crystal in Yu's hands. Yu declared that this loot belonged to them, the fun team. Yu asked with a smile, would a Class 1 hero just rob them here? Alas, Yoon Do-ha is no slouch. He states that this is an order from the association, and he signed a contract to destroy this mutant. Yu activated his eye again and firmly stated that this problem is not his. The system notified Yu that the chance of winning was 0%. Yoon, scratching the back of his head, kept saying that he thought there was a small misunderstanding. Yu-ha abruptly disappeared and was behind Yui, preparing to tackle him. It was an order, not a request. So Yoon sealed Yu directly into the ground and lovingly addressed the dear newbie spirit mage.
While Yu and the big guy successfully faced off in a fight, Jank watched them gritting his teeth and wondering why, out of all the possible people, this particular person came. Is the leader of one of the guilds that are in the top 5 list called Dice. He's also the only Earth Elementalist in the world. Transcendent hero. He is called Earth Dragon. His real name is Do-ha. After Yoon attacked, Yu Kim immediately put her staff forward and warned him to move away from Yu. Kim began to charge her staff with blue energy, her face changing after she heard Yoon say that she better not move. The big man continued to hold Yu to the ground and with a smile kept straining the atmosphere around him, with his aura saying that if Kim moved, Yu would die. Kim flinched when she heard that and realized that this dude was being serious. At that moment, Yoon's gaze changed and Yu's blue light hit the big guy's face. Yu pressed himself to the floor, turned to Yoon and asked, "Die? No, you will die." The big guy's body began to be covered in a semblance of turquoise vine. It's wind night. A huge explosion filled with wind energy appeared. Yoon managed to fold his arms and block this attack. The attack was strong enough to push Yu's opponent away. The attack also slammed Yoon right into the rock. Yoon made a mega serious face and started to wonder. He was definitely stuck in the ground though. Yu rose back to his feet, and where he had fallen there was a sphere of wind that gathered the air around him. Yoon realized that the moment he had pinned Yu into the ground, Yu had created his element to cancel out the damage he could receive. Yoon corrected his glasses and realized that in addition to hiding his element, he had managed to counterattack. While Yu's face continued to squirm with fatigue, covered in sweat, Yoon called him an interesting brat in his head. At that moment, the system rang a bell, warning that if Yu continued to use his elemental magic, then his chance of dying would be 95%. That's why Yu wiped his sweat and focused on his thoughts. He realized that he had put all his remaining mana into this attack, but it did not do any damage to his opponent. As Yu watched Yoon adjusting his glasses and smiling in anticipation of the fight, he realized that this hero was most likely a first-class hero. Yet Yu also realized that he was no match for this man. Yoon's aura lit up in anticipation of the fight. He turned to the dear newcomer and stated that he was going to start the second round. No sooner had Yoon approached, uttering epic phrases, than the magic stone was right in his hand. Yu raised his hands and regretfully announced that he was giving up. Yoon immediately got angry and asked Yu how he was giving up, as Yu immediately asked his opponent if the magic crystal was his target. Yu also stated that he had no desire to fight anymore, nor was there any point. Yu immediately said something about Artifact 38, Paragraph 8 of the Hero Code. At that moment, the gorilla's face was wrinkled with anger and bewilderment. Yoon said that he just wanted to have fun. Yoon turned his gaze in the direction where the helicopters had come from, and Yoon regretfully announced that the association members had arrived. Kim and Yu were covering themselves from the wind of the helicopters. Kim immediately recognized that they were the helicopters of the association. The girl immediately started yelling at Yoon and asking him why he was doing this on his own. A satisfied Yoon held the crystal in his hand and addressed the girl, saying that he had already completed his task and the girl shouldn't bother him anymore. Yoon went to the helicopter and told Yu that they would find the winner later. Yet Yoon asked the name of the elementalist kid. Yu continued to protect himself from the wind currents by saying his name was Yu Jihan, and Yu also said that he was in the Fun Guild. Hearing that Yu was in Fun Guild, Yoon immediately smiled. Yoon told the Fun Guild members to start participating in the 4th class promotion test. Yoon also said that he would recommend them personally. Yu was embarrassed and asked why he was doing that, to which Yoon said that he felt that way, and then Yoon made a mocking sound like kek and climbed into the helicopter. After the helicopter left, Yoon sat comfortably in the helicopter and asked the girl if she heard what he said. He would write a letter of recommendation to the two of them later. The girl couldn't understand how they would approve a letter of recommendation in 2 days, since the exam was only 2 days away. Moreover, the girl with glasses stated that their guild was still unconfirmed. The girl also noticed that Yoon Do-ha-him was injured, with a bruise on his shoulder due to Yu's attack before. Yoon continued to laugh and enjoy the moment, saying that it was really fun. At this time, the events once again moved to the Fun Guild headquarters. Poor Jank sat on his knees and tearfully admitted that he was wrong. At the same time, the angry Kim and Yu stood in front of him and said that because of the past events, he was about to get a beating. Jank looked at the angry people and asked them to listen to him first. Jank smiled bluntly and said that he had heard them talking earlier, and he pointed out the fact that they were going to move up to 4th grade because of the test. Jank also said that the test would start in 2 days, so he suggested that they change their equipment. Jank pointed out Yu's weapons, saying that his sword will break soon, and the same goes for the other equipment. If Yu takes the test like this, it's going to be a disaster. Jank put his hand on his heart and supposedly said in all honesty that he could take them to the workshop and then they could beat him up. Yu and Kim looked at each other and then asked him to take them. Yoon unlocks the door to a workshop in the city. Yu immediately looks around the room, where there is only a furnace and special equipment and tools for making weapons, and he doesn't find a worker. Kim was getting angry because she thought Jank was trying to trick them, so Jank smiled and said he would never ever do such a thing. While Jank is making excuses to the Fun Guild members, a loud voice is heard asking, "Who the hell are they?" A man with a long beard raises his hammer and says that today it's day off. At first glance, a dwarf of medium height appears and smilingly asks the guests what the hell they are doing here. The dwarves are a race made up of first-class blacksmiths. It's the race that a hero wants to meet the most, as dwarven weapons boast S-rank quality. Kim smiled with delight at seeing a dwarf for the first time. Kim was also seeing a dwarf for the first time and therefore was starstruck. Meanwhile, Jank was slyly running away from the two men. Kim turned to Jank with a smile and said that she didn't think he would lead them to the dwarf. But the sly Jank had already slipped away from Kim, leaving her puzzled. The dwarf had already laughed and said it was nonsense. But with a smile, the sly dwarf said he wasn't a dwarf, he was a pure-blooded Korean. Kim and Yu were confused and surprised that he was Korean. Of course, Kim and Yu were surprised and didn't believe it and asked to see his ID. The fake dwarf laughed and called them crazy dumbasses. The Korean showed them his ID card, and Kim and Yu couldn't resist looking at the card. Our little dwarf, turns out his name is Nam Hoyol, and he's 27 years old. The picture doesn't look like a real little dwarf either. Kim and Yu began to doubt that this was really his passport, and they were about to report him to the police. Kim started to hold her head and shout angrily, resenting that Jank had tricked them again, while Yu, with a cold face, asked her to call 222 so that the police could get here quickly. When Hoyol saw Yu's sword, he was outraged and asked him to show him his sword. Hoyol picked up the sword and activated some markings. With a surprised face, Hoyol looked at the burning blade of the sword. Hoyol asked Yu if he was a wind elementalist. Yu was surprised and asked him how he knew this, to which Hoyol said that a first-class blacksmith can understand the class of a user by looking at the markings on the user's weapon. Inspecting the cracked sword, Yahello regretfully realized that it looked like the sword couldn't handle the elementalist's strength. The blacksmith immediately went to the armory and started rummaging through it while saying that he had the perfect weapon for elementalists. Finally, he found it. Hoyol, with an epic look, held out a sword filled with energy to Yu, this sword that embraces the elements called Nam Hoyol sword. Yu took it in his hands and immediately began to be filled with energy that lightly flew around him. Just like that, time passed very quickly. The day of the test had arrived. The events unfolded in a huge church. Yu opened the door to the room and met a lot of other participants who are already talking to each other. Yu and Kim started talking to each other. Kim changed her clothes, wearing a white blouse and a leather jacket with a cool choker. Yu wore armor in the same leather jacket. Yu began to quickly analyze his surroundings and realized that this was indeed the Class 4 test, and it had truly been a while. He also realized that there were definitely a lot of people back when he was in Kairos too. The other heroes started calling Yu crazy because they recognized him as the exiled man from Kairos, and now he had come to raise his level to 4. Kim quietly turned to Yu, saying that they were probably talking about him. Yu was happy to say that they should be, for people tend to spread rumors when they gather. In any case, Yu realized that they didn't know about what had happened in MA, namely his encounter with the first-class hero. Yu decided to hide the fact that he was an elementalist for as long as possible, because nothing good would come of it. At that moment, a firm voice ordered everyone around him to be quiet. The mysterious man immediately drew the attention of everyone around him by saying that he thought that they were making a fuss over a mere Class 4 test. He advised to follow his feelings. Yu also began to listen to the man's admonition that alone they were stupid idiots who couldn't do anything. The man came up to Yu and looked down at him, embarrassing him all around. The man was an angry nerd with a slicked-back hairdo. It was a Class 4 examiner named Bang Yun-sik. Yu immediately realized it was that idiot Yun Doha. After looking at the evil monster, Yu's eye activated and the system notified him that the chance of passing the test was now 1%. At this time, Yun received a notification from his assistant that she had already sent the 4th grade recommendation since he had asked her before. Yet the girl opened her document and said that she had found a strange thing. The girl didn't understand. Why had he chosen Bang Yun-sik as his examiner? Yeah, the one with the bangs that looked like an asshole with slick back bangs. Putting that aside, we move on to the Class 4 testing area where there's nothing but glass. One of the teams promptly surrounds the examiner, who is even a little relaxed at first glance. The man's veins bulge from his neck, his eyes burning with anger. While all three of them are trying to attack the examiner, he ponders their strategy, saying that attacking right after the gong without any strategy or tactics is just stupid. After the sword blades passed near his head, the bodies of the squad members immediately flew up and the examiner put his sword back into its sheath. Team 12 failed the exam in a couple of moments. The other examiners are watching and chatting among themselves, asking why Bank Yunshik is going so far. The girl said loudly that she didn't think anyone would pass the exam. Class 4 examiner Kim Han-sok said with a smile that Class 5 copycats are all like that. A Class 4 examiner named Oh Hien said she was going to report to the people at the top because of that. Also, the hooded Seo Youngwoo Class 4 examiner said that now there would be a final team. Yu and Kim appeared on the screen with the guild name Fun. Kim Han-sok smilingly recognized Yu as the one the examiners recognized as the dude Yoon had recommended. By the way, this is guild affiliation from Dice Guild, of which Yoon is the leader. At this time, Yu and Kim are entering the threshold of this location. Han-sok pointed out the fact that he is a man with no flexibility whatsoever. Their team leader, the sullen Bank Yunshik Dice Guild party leader. So after Yu and Kim entered the location, they were welcomed into the Class 4 exam hall. The system also stated that in the next 5 minutes, they will engage in a battle with the examiner. The requirement for promotion is fulfiller the moment they either completely defeat the examiner or receive acknowledgement from the examiner. Kim, on the other hand, shrieked sharply, "How do they think we can beat the examiner in 5th grade?" At that moment, Yu reached for the sword in its scabbard. The scary face of the examiner continued to stare at Yu's face, and Yu noticed that there was not a single scratch on his face. Before the fight, Yu asked Kim to support him from the back like during that MA stay. Yu started to get energized and said that it won't be an easy fight. Yu pulled out his blade, Kim and Yu got into a fighting stance, and the Class 4 examination began. After saying that, the examiner appeared right in front of Yu and dragged him off his foot. Yu luckily was able to block the blow. Yu gritted his teeth and realized that this man was able to attack him as soon as the exam started. A huge explosion appeared. The examiner aimed his fist straight at Kim, but the moment the blow was about to hit, Kim disappeared from the scene. The examiner was surprised to find his fist stopped in a sort of air barrier. It turned out that Kim wasn't missing, but a column of smoke was covering her, and the examiner was resting his fist on the block of Yu energy he had created before. The examiner turned towards Yu and realized that the recommendation letter didn't look so fake now. At this time, Yu held the barrier with all his might. Still, the examiner managed to kick Kim after the examiner rested on one leg and made a quick dash to the already standing Yu. Yu blocked the wooden sword and gritted his teeth because of the tension. He was covered in mana, and only because of that, he realized that the examiner was so damn strong because even the wooden sword allowed him to fight at this level. Still, Yu realized that he needed to distance himself first. Yu used his Wind Knight ability and used the energy flow to push away the examiner, who was able to prevent the damage by leaning on his sword. The examiner noticed that he was using the wind element. Yu used the haste ability and flew behind the examiner, who had already realized it, and his face changed. The examiner immediately turned around and looked at Yu. Why was this person chosen as the examiner? With a smile, the cunning Yun realized that there was no one but that bastard, a swordsman that cuts the wind. The examiner smiled evilly and tensed the atmosphere around him with his presence. Quick sword flow. The examiner was able to shatter all the attacks aimed at him with his sword in a second. These attacks also hurt Yu, so he was immediately attacked by the strongest attack and flew away. Moreover, the sword slashes reached his body, so strong that they severely injured him. After a while, the examiner smilingly looked at Yu's body, lying there exhausted. Yu realized that he had slightly lost to the examiner in his speed. Yu started coughing up blood and remembering the past. Moreover, there is one problem. This is the sword Yu received. This sword absorbs an insane amount of mana. The examiner turned to Yu and asked him how he managed to get a letter of recommendation with only this level of skill. While the examiner was having an epic conversation, Kim appeared behind him and began charging her staff. Kim created many magic circles that surrounded the staff and created huge energy flows. Kim's shot was partially successful as the examiner jumped away from Yu. Kim then landed beside Yu and stood in his defense, saying that from now on, everything would be hers. Kim realized that she couldn't hide behind Yu anymore. She had to show herself. The examiner turned to Kim and called her a fool and asked her why she wouldn't let the fool go. Kim said she is not a fool. Kim showed her ears with her hair off and said she was Fun Guild Master Kim Si-hoo. The examiner smiled evilly, asking if she was really an elf. The examiner realized that she was a mage, but a stupid mage, because she was throwing herself into melee combat. The examiner himself is a swordsman, so the examiner created a lot of cuts and said that this is exactly what he expected from a complete fool. Kim closed her eyes beautifully. By the way, in this world, elves can sense mana flows. Kim began like a ballerina on ice to dodge the slashes aimed at her. Kim recreated magic circles and used wind arrow. A huge arrow of wind was aimed straight at the examiner. The examiner parried the attack with ease and stated that it was stupid, and something like that usually doesn't work at close range. At this moment, something mysterious happened. A magic circle appeared behind the examiner. The examiner had time to react and repel the attack, but now the examiner's taunts were doubtful. After two magic circles appeared behind the examiner immediately noticed it and wondered, what? The magic circles again created projectiles that the examiner deflected. The examiner was also surprised to find that the 5th class was using multiple casting. The examiner's eye opened wider when he saw this. 6-fold magic. 6 circles appeared, pointing straight at the examiner. Also underneath the examiner were magical hands that slowed him down. So moreover, the girl was now using 7-fold magic. Many arrows were aimed straight at the examiner. This caused a huge explosion to appear. Kim began to cover herself from the explosion. Now Kim began to understand why he was called the examiner. The examiner stated that it was not bad. The examiner was impressed with Kim's strategy called square up. The examiner put the sword right to Kim's neck and said it was slow. This amazed Kim, who was now standing in a cold sweat. Kim realized that this genius had blocked 7-fold magic. At this time, Yu got to his feet. Yu began to charge his blade and stated pathetically that he would lose because of his arrogance. It's not that the sword was absorbing mana. He was just wasting mana. Yu began to charge the blade of his sword and started the process of compressing the minimum mana to the maximum, and after that, his plan was to cut. Yu fully charged the sword with his element and swung it, directing the attack straight at Kim. The wooden sword was destroyed. Yu and the examiner clashed in a fierce duel. Yu put the blade of his sword right against the examiner's neck. Yu looked straight at the angry, dejected examiner with a charged eye. Sighing, the examiner realized how he had obtained Yun's recommendation. As if in the middle of the forest, the examiner had lost the duel and said he was giving up. The examiner mentally admits to himself that the elementalist class is like cheating in a video game. The events move to the waiting room where Yu and Kim are already dying from this event. Kim turned to Yu with stars in her eyes and asked what kind of person was he that adapted to using elemental magic so quickly. Kim simply stated that he didn't know it himself. Kim continued to look at his hand and admitted to himself that he felt like he got closer to elemental magic through in this battle. Yu remembered Yun and realized that maybe it was that he intended this. Yu also made Kim blush by saying that she was also beautiful, and it was only because of her that they were able to win. Yu said that somehow they were able to pass the exam, but there's still an examination waiting for them. Now there are people coming out from it. In the end, Yu and Kim have to watch these people. The Fun Guild was called next. At this time, the committee was chatting amongst themselves. They pointed out the fact that the previous party prepared a lot. One of the members also pointed out that their battle examination was very interesting as well. Kim and Yu stood in front of the committee members who were ready to talk to them. One of the committee members smilingly flipped through a document and told the people around them that if they had no objections, they would raise the At that moment, the members' words were interrupted by an ugly voice saying that they had to eliminate them. The man with the scary duck face said that their team tanker hesitated too much. At this rate, he'll surely panic when the party members are attacked. It's one of the Warriors Guild members named Lee Dongho. The duck-faced dude started crumpling the sheet and asking how they could even be promoted to 4th grade. While Yu was holding back his emotions, the freak kept laughing, saying that no one would get promoted at this rate. Finally, our favorites were called, and the next interviewees were seated here. Yu and Kim immediately sat down on the chairs next to the interviewees. Of course, they immediately introduced themselves, and the nice guy from the committee looked at the sheet. The duck-faced dude decided not to listen to his coworker, and therefore asked Kim to show her ears. Kim immediately agreed. Kim started to remove her hair, and then showed her long ears. The duck started smiling evilly and asked, "Wow, is that a halfie?" Rude started licking his lips and said that he thought she was a purebred. Finally, his colleague couldn't stand it, saying that he should watch his words. Then the rude man apologized and grinned and asked Yu to relax his face. You could read on Yu's face, "That bastard." Kim grabbed Yu's hand and said it was okay. Then Yu started to restrain himself, and Duckface decided to continue the interview. They clarified from Kim, is she really a half monster? And after confirming, they also clarified if they really eliminated mutated cockatrix in MA. Yu confirmed this fact. The co-workers were surprised at the pace of the guild, as at that moment a rude man interrupted the co-workers. He folded his arms and stated that he had been a hero for 10 years, and this was the first time he had seen a half-elf create a guild. Then the brute with his duck lips said he had something to ask. What if South Korea came face to face with the hostile elves? Which side would it take? Kim's face changed upon hearing those words. Kim, in a cold sweat, tried to answer, but all she could do was stammer a few words. Yu said firmly that he couldn't listen to this anymore. The Warriors Guild must educate their guild members this way, huh? Yu started destroying the brute by saying that since just now he haven't been interested in the promotion examination at all, and he just keep attacking Guildmaster Kim. Colleagues were surprised after the rude man slapped the table and said that he didn't need this information. He only needed it for an alleged interview. But Yu didn't care about anything. He demanded an immediate decision on promotion. Kim, on the other hand, realized at this point that she was a bit redundant here. The events moved to the Fun Guild headquarters, where Kim is finally able to relax and drink her drink in peace. Yu apologized to Kim, saying he was sorry because he made them fail the exam. Kim said it was okay. Kim also averted her eyes sweetly and pointed out the fact that she was happy that it was the first time someone was defending her and was mad about it. This made Yu surprised. Yu noticed that Kim looked too confident for someone who was always pressing the refresh button. After downloading, Kim immediately noticed that everything had updated, so Yu immediately rushed closer to the computer. Finally, Yu and Kim looked at each other. What is it? After the interview, the committee members asked the rude man, what did he think of Fun Guild? The rude guy flipped his apple and admitted that he was sorry for the way things turned out. The rude guy admitted that he pushed them too hard. Still, he wondered how far they could grow. In his mind, he asked them to grow up so that he could topple them from the heights. Fun Guild was on the list of those who were able to get promoted. The events are being moved to Pajusi Gyeonggi to Class 2 MA. The shielded location was empty until a strangely shaped bus arrived. This bus was immediately greeted by admiring faces and fans with reporters. From this bus, all the members of Huntai's party came out. The girls immediately started asking Hunta's C to look at them just for a second. The security guards immediately started to keep all the groupies away from Kim. Still, Kim, with an evil smile, stopped the guard who was about to hit the girls. Asking what the rude man was doing, Kim smilingly turned to the girls and thanked them for taking the time to attend their event. After Kim and his squad went to MA, the girls shouted at him that he was sweet. After Kim entered MA, he said that this trash annoyed him so much that he would kill them. Tank also noticed that there were a lot of people here today, not like yesterday. Still, Kim didn't understand how they knew when to come and at what time. Still, some freak turned to Kim and pointed out that the girl in front was a freak. He smiled wryly. By the way, This is Kang Woo, a member of their Karaz guild. Kang Woo asked the leader what kind of girls he liked. I personally like tall and big. Ahem. Anyway, Kim just likes pretty girls. I'll tell you more. This Kang Woo guy said that he's bringing a couple of pretty girls with him this week, so he suggested that everyone go to the club. However, Sai Yeon turned to the newcomer and pointed out the fact that they were here too, so she asked him to stop talking nonsense. Then Kang Woo turned around and asked if she wanted to join them because there would be a lot of models there. That's it. It's all gone. Seon blushed when she heard those words and asked what the fool was saying. Kang Woo also said that he invited some handsome friends to the party. By the way, this idiot keeps adding the word kek. Kang Woo realized that if he just keeps sweet-talking, she will fall in love with him and everything will be easy. Kang Woo turned his gaze in the other direction and saw this. He didn't know what he should do with this mysterious female assassin with karambits. The girl turned to him, asking him what he wanted, as the same stated that she wanted nothing. He decided to check on her a little later. At that moment, the leader noticed other people who greeted him with my trademark, yo. So the three of them ran into each other in MA. The leader of the other squad immediately turned to Kim, saying that they hadn't seen each other for ages since the last encounter in MA, maybe a couple months. However, the leader noticed that Yo had gone somewhere else, so he asked where the man had gone, specifically the bag carrier. Kim turned grudgingly to the dude with the hat. Kim stated that he had left recently, and that was why this newcomer had recently joined them. Kang Woo immediately introduced himself to the other team. The leader of the other team immediately stated that it was a nuisance. These words made Kim angry, and he asked why. The leader of the other team recalled that when he had been in their pack about 1 year ago, they had received tremendous support from Yu. The leader also recalled that his sword movements were close to perfect without any of the jokes. The leader couldn't believe that he could move like that while carrying such a huge briefcase of stuff. After saying goodbye, the leader asked Kim to contact them in case Yu still hadn't joined the guild, and they would take him in. After saying goodbye to Kim, the leader left, and Kim remained standing in a depressed state. At this time, the Saber Cat Class 4 monster unleashes its blades and rushes to attack. Yu in fancy clothes also rushes to attack, asking Kim to support him. Kim realizes this, so she starts to charge up with blue energy, focusing it in the staff. 2 magical circles are created that follow Yu straight to the target. The arrows pierce the monster, and Yu cuts it in half with her blade. Kim exclaimed, "Good! I thought it would be harder, fighting monsters in MA level 4. Kim and Yu exchanged thoughts about the fight, and then they heard cries for help. Kim and Yu immediately rushed to the source of the sound. Kim immediately realized that it was probably an ordinary citizen who had been caught and couldn't escape. However, Yu is troubled by the fact that the sound seemed familiar to him. Yu and Kim started rushing into the room, shouting that they were members of Fun Guild and they were going to help, and they saw poor Jank in the room, who was trying his best to keep the monster from closing its mouth. So they helped him, and Kim blushed and said that she thought they were seeing each other in a place like this. Kim continued with a smile that it was fate,